Hey guys, my name is Nikki Renfroe. I'm a recently retired state trooper, and I decided to start a podcast, Safe Nation Podcast. We're covering safety, security, and law enforcement because the truth of the matter is crime is not always clean. It's a dirty job. Sometimes you got to get your hands dirty in order to get those criminals off the streets. And that's just the real reality of it. That's the cold, hard truth for the everyday citizen who wants tips on how to be safe as they travel back and forth every day, school, work, home, and worship. And also for the law enforcement professional to hear industry tips and what's happening on a day-to-day to assist them in their professional lives. I retired in May of 2022 at the rank of captain from the Georgia State Patrol. I served 27 years, 11 months, but who's counting, right? And was credited with 30 years of service. And I wouldn't trade one moment of it for the world. God could not have handed me a better career fit for my life. In addition to being a road trooper, I spent 9 years as a hostage or crisis negotiator and negotiations commander. I was a crash reconstructionist, where I was a part of a team who only investigated vehicle crashes where there was a fatality involved and the at-fault person was still alive to face prosecution. I was also a recruiter for our agency and a supervisor at every level through the ranks up to captain. Some of the most notable times in my career occurred during the 6 years I was assigned to the Metro Atlanta area as a commander over that region from 2014 to 2020. During that time period, we saw lots of social activism, protests, and civil unrest stemming from the deaths of Michael Brown to George Floyd, and unfortunately many more. Just in that short time frame, law enforcement nationwide went from seeing the development of 21st century policing to some of the largest and longest running protests in our nation's history. There's so much to unpack about this and other roles I've been afforded, so I'll be sure to share more of my experiences in future episodes. Now, I don't know about you, but living in fear is not where I want to be. I am not about that life. So we'll cover how to better position ourselves to decrease our chances of becoming victims and increase our opportunities of how to realize those basic fundamental needs of being safe and secure. I'm excited about bringing guests on the show who will share their professional opinions and sometimes not so professional opinions. We'll hear from police chiefs, corporate security professionals, traffic safety experts, and regular old folks, and everyone in between. Since retiring, people have asked how it feels to not have those heavy responsibilities and the stress that it brings. They also continue to ask me my thoughts on backing the blue. Let me say this. I back the blue in terms of doing the right thing. What that means for some people may not mean the same thing for others. And so when I say I back the blue, I come from a long law enforcement career. In fact, I have family members who are in law enforcement, work in corrections, all of that. So it's not just me. But when I say I back the blue, I back what's right. I'm a process person. I always ask people, what's the most important thing on your uniform that you're wearing? And some will say, oh, my gun or my badge or whatever. No, let me tell you what's most important is your nameplate. Okay, it's your name. Your name needs to mean something. And so always when I put a uniform on, that meant everything to me. My name first, okay? And that's what it should be about. It's about protecting people, actually serving the public. I know it sounds cliche, and society will have you thinking that none of that is happening anymore, but that's just simply not true. That is absolutely not true. We do have people doing the right thing, and for those who are not doing the right thing, then we have to handle them accordingly. I look at it as quality control. As a supervisor, I don't care if you're working in a factory counting widgets, and all you do is count widgets every day, okay? You're gonna look at those things. You have an inspector to look and see about quality control. If it doesn't pass the muster, it's gotta get out of there, right? It's bad for business. It might cause harm to someone. It's the same way about a bad law enforcement officer. okay? Quality control, and that's why it's important that our supervisors in law enforcement, those first line supervisors, those sergeants that are in charge of those shifts, that those guys are the ones held responsible for what their officers are doing. When they begin to see infractions take place, don't take it for granted. It has to be addressed immediately. We cannot let those things slip by, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, okay? And we're talking about people's freedoms here. We're talking about the ability, just when I throw my hand up as an officer, I'm stopping all the traffic. You know how much power is in that? Some people don't know how to use that power. Okay, they weren't taught that early on, that you can serve and you can have this authority, but there's a way to do it in an humble manner. There's a way to do it in a respectful manner. There's a way to do it where you gain the respect from the public. And that's what law enforcement should be about. Quality control comes first. At the end of the day, I chose to get into a law enforcement profession. I chose to do that. I say I chose it, but I think I was called to do it. But even at the end of all that, and here I am at the end, I've hung up my gun, I've hung up my badge, I've hung up my uniform. So even at the end of all of that, who am I really? I'm still Nikki Renfroe. I'm still that same person. I don't have any of that to, I won't say hide behind, but I can't attach that to my name anymore. I've already done that. So it's important that your name is your foundation. There's a legacy behind your name. We should be leaving a legacy behind your name. So if your name was pinned on a uniform, then those behind you, your children, they should look at that in pride and say, that was my name on that uniform. We did it the right way. We did the right thing. The relationship between law enforcement and community should be a collaborative effort always. It's not just one side or the other. It's kind of like faith without works is dead. You got to have both. Otherwise, you're standing there with a corpse. That's what you're going to be standing there with if law enforcement does not connect with the community. And unfortunately, sometimes a literal corpse if you're not careful. You have to have those conversations. They need to know one another. If you have new officers coming into a particular zone or precinct, that side of town, working in that area or that sector, they need to go out and meet the top community leaders. That needs to be a part of what they do. And then those community leaders are going to bring in others for that meet and greet. It should not be strange. It should not be strange fruit for officers to know exactly who they're dealing with in their areas. When we think safety, because there are going to be other topics, like I'll give you an example. I'm going to try to get this interview with a rideshare corporation, and we want to talk about what they have in place for people to be safe as riders and also as drivers. You know, we're talking about ridership safety. So I guess I'm thinking safety in terms of that, safety in terms of traffic safety. I have an extensive traffic safety background. So getting somebody in here to talk about. So that's what I meant, like on the safety side of things, that law enforcement piece in my head, I was wrapping all of those things around that community part and everything that law enforcement does there. The security piece in my head, I was thinking about actual security companies, security guards, cybersecurity, physical security. That's a whole nother industry, separate from law enforcement. So all of those things were kind of separate, and that's why it was safety, security, and law enforcement. I want somebody a part of every single episode. If I can make that happen, I will, just to talk about of any variety of topics, because quite frankly, we need to feel safe where we live, where we work, where we play, where we worship, right? Where we educate ourselves in our educational institutions. We need to feel safe in those spaces. And so bringing in those industry professionals, people within those realms and in those spaces, and even maybe from time to time talking to some victims of some crimes, lessons learned, those sort of things, that's what I'm hoping to bring to this platform. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Safe Nation, Safety, Security, and Law Enforcement. See you guys next time. Be safe, y'all.